A retired U.S. Army medic stops on a deserted Arizona road and finds an Apache child on the brink of death. What happens next changes everything, as a mother's decision tests trust, courage, and humanity in ways he never expected. You won't believe how one act of bravery can bridge two worlds. Watch the full story now, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable true-life moments. The desert was burning under the Arizona sun, stretching endlessly in shades of dust and stone. Heat shimmered above the highway as John Miller's old pickup truck slowed to a stop. He sat behind the wheel for a moment, gripping it tightly, feeling the familiar weight of silence. John was a retired U.S. Army medic, a man who had seen too much noise in war zones, and now searched for quiet wherever he could find it. This road trip was supposed to be simple. No destinations, no people, no memories. Just miles of empty land and the illusion of peace. He had been chasing since leaving the army. As he stepped out of the truck, the heat hit him like a wall. The air felt heavy, almost alive, pressing against his chest. John took a deep breath and reached into the back seat for a bottle of water. That was when he heard it. A faint sound, barely noticeable, carried by the wind. At first, he dismissed it. The desert often played tricks on the ears. But the sound came again, weaker this time, unmistakably human. A cry, thin, fragile, his instincts, sharpened by years of combat medicine, kicked in before his mind could argue. John grabbed his medical bag and moved toward the sound, boots crunching against dry sand and loose rock. Each step felt slower under the relentless sun. The cry faded in and out, as if whoever made it was running out of strength. His thoughts raced through worst-case scenarios, but his hands remained steady. This wasn't the first time he had walked toward uncertainty. The desert reminded him too much of places he had sworn never to revisit. But training overpowered fear. Someone needed help, and that was enough. He found her lying near a cluster of rocks, a small Apache child, no more than 6 or 7 years old. Her skin was hot, lips cracked, chest rising shallowly, dehydration, heat, stroke, severe. John knelt beside her and checked her pulse. Weak but present. Time was running out. For a moment, the world narrowed to the child in front of him. Rank, nationality, history, none of it mattered. She was a life slipping away. He opened his bag and worked quickly. Measured movements born from countless emergencies. He moistened her lips with small drops of water, careful not to overwhelm her system. His hands moved with practiced precision as he set up an IV, shielding it from the sun with his body. He spoke softly, his voice calm and steady. "You're going to be okay. Stay with me." He didn't know if she could hear him, but he kept talking. He had learned long ago that words could anchor a person to life when nothing else could. The desert wind carried his voice away, but he kept going. As he worked, flashes of the past intruded. Makeshift tents, wounded soldiers, screams in foreign languages. John pushed them aside. This was different. This was now. The child stirred slightly, her fingers twitching. It was enough to keep him going. Sweat rolled down his face, blurring his vision, but relief flickered in his chest. She was fighting. He adjusted the IV and monitored her breathing, fully aware that help was miles away. Out here, he was all she had. A sudden shift in the air made him look up. Shapes moved along the ridgeline, silent, watchful. Apache tribe members emerged slowly from behind the rocks, their presence controlled and deliberate. They said nothing. Their eyes were fixed on John and the child. The tension was immediate and heavy. John froze his movements, keeping his hands visible. He understood the history, the mistrust. Outsiders rarely arrived with good intentions. He stayed kneeling, vulnerable by choice, showing no threat. The child's breathing grew steadier, and one of the figures stepped closer. John felt every second stretch. He didn't speak, didn't explain. He let his actions speak for him. Years in the army had taught him that respect wasn't demanded. It was demonstrated. He continued treating the child with the same care, aware that every move was being judged. The silence between them was louder than words, filled with generations of pain and caution. As the minutes passed, the child opened her eyes slightly, a faint spark of awareness returning. A soft murmur rippled through the group behind him. John exhaled slowly, tension releasing from his shoulders. He knew this moment mattered, not just for the child, but for what came next. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. He wasn't here to change history, but he could choose not to repeat it. The sun continued its relentless descent, casting long shadows across the sand. John stayed where he was, committed to seeing this through. Whatever happened next was out of his control. But one thing was certain. Stopping on that road had changed. Everything, the silence after the child opened. Her eyes felt heavier than the heat itself. John remained kneeling, his body tense but controlled, aware that every breath he took was being watched. The Apache tribe members slowly formed a loose circle around him. No one spoke. Their faces carried neither anger nor gratitude, only caution shaped by centuries of loss. John had learned in war that silence was often the most dangerous language, so he respected it. He kept his eyes lowered, his focus on the child, adjusting the IV and shielding her from the sun. A woman stepped forward from the group. She was tall, her posture straight, her presence commanding without effort. Dust clung to the hem of her dress, and silver strands ran through her dark hair. This was the child's mother. John felt it instantly. She didn't rush. She didn't cry. She simply knelt beside her daughter and placed a hand on the girl's chest, feeling her breathing. Her expression didn't change, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. That single movement told John more than words ever could. The woman's eyes met his. They were sharp, searching, weighing his intentions. John slowly removed his gloves and set them on the ground. A quiet gesture of respect. He spoke carefully, keeping his voice low and steady. He explained who he was, what he had done, and why he stopped. No excuses, no heroics, just truth. When he finished, he waited. In the army, he had learned that patience could save lives just as often as skill. The woman looked back at her people, then at the child again. She nodded once. Two men stepped forward and helped lift the girl onto a woven stretcher. John instinctively moved to assist, then stopped, unsure if he was welcome. The mother looked at him again and made a small gesture with her hand. An invitation, not spoken but clear. John followed them toward the camp, his heart pounding harder with each step. The camp sat in a natural basin protected from the wind. Fires burned low, and the smell of herbs filled the air. Elders watched silently as the child was laid inside a shaded structure. John stayed near the entrance, unsure of his place. He felt like a guest who had wandered into a sacred space unannounced. The mother knelt beside her daughter and began whispering words. John didn't understand. He recognized the tone, prayer, hope, fear intertwined. Time passed slowly. The sun dipped lower, and the desert cooled. John monitored the child's condition from a distance, offering guidance when asked, but never pushing forward. The tribe worked together with practiced unity, using traditional remedies alongside his medical intervention. It wasn't conflict, it was balance. John realized he wasn't replacing anything. He was simply one piece in a larger effort to save this child. As night settled in, the mother approached him again. She thanked him, not with dramatic words, but with sincerity. She told him her daughter's name and explained why this moment mattered, more than he could understand. The child was part of a lineage that carried stories, traditions, and responsibilities passed down through generations. Losing her would have meant more than personal grief. It would have meant a fracture in their living history. John listened, humbled. For years, he had defined his worth by missions and outcomes, by lives saved or lost under orders he didn't always believe in. This was different. There were no ranks here, no commands, just human connection. He realized that for the first time in a long while, he felt useful without feeling broken. Later that night, as stars filled the sky, the elders gathered. John wasn't part of the circle, but he could sense the gravity of the discussion. The mother spoke at length, gesturing toward John. When the meeting ended, she approached him once more. Her decision was clear. The tribe would offer shelter for the night and safe passage in the days to come. It wasn't a reward, John accepted quietly. He knew how rare this was. Round the fire, stories were shared. Not all were happy. There were stories of betrayal, of broken promises, of outsiders who took and never gave back. John didn't interrupt. He didn't defend anyone. He listened. It was the least he could do. Before dawn, the child stirred again. This time she sat up, weak but alert. When she saw her mother, she smiled faintly. John turned away, giving them privacy, but the image stayed with him. It was the kind of moment soldiers dreamed of when they enlisted, the proof that pain could lead to purpose. When morning came, John prepared to leave. He packed his bag slowly, reluctant but understanding. The desert road still waited for him. The mother walked with him to the edge of the camp. She placed a small hand-woven band in his palm, a symbol of gratitude and remembrance. She told him that some paths cross for a reason, even if they part again. John drove away as the sun rose, the desert no longer feeling empty. He wasn't the same man who had stopped on that road. He carried something new with him, not pride, not guilt, but clarity. He had saved a child, yes, but in doing so, he had found a way back to himself. And somewhere behind him, in the quiet strength of an Apache camp, a future remained intact, because one man chose to stop, and one mother chose to trust. The morning sun slowly spread across the Arizona desert, casting long shadows over the sand and rocks. John Miller drove away from the camp, his hands steady on the wheel. Yet his mind weighed with a quiet sense of purpose. He knew the child's life had been saved, but what lingered strongest was the bond of trust the mother had extended to him, a gift far more profound than gratitude. Inside the camp, the mother returned to her people, her decision unwavering. She had chosen not just to protect her daughter, but to honor the act of bravery that had bridged two very different worlds. John's presence, a stranger's intervention, had sparked something rare, a connection built on courage, respect, and humanity. That moment in the desert wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding, and about the choices that define us when no one is watching. As the sun climbed higher, John reflected on how unpredictable life could be. A routine drive down a lonely highway, a single stop, and one small act of courage had changed the course of multiple lives. He realized that acts of humanity, even the smallest ones, could ripple far beyond what anyone might expect. Driving along the open road, John felt a renewed clarity and purpose. He knew this moment would stay with him forever, not just for him, but for the mother, the child, and the generations that would follow. A simple decision to stop, a life saved in the desert, had created a story of connection and hope that could never be forgotten. As the desert stretched endlessly on either side, the rising sun illuminated everything. John understood one undeniable truth. Courage exists in every person. Sometimes all it takes is one choice to bring it to life. Today he had made that choice, and nothing would ever feel the same again.